Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special Q&A session and interview with Dr. EyjoG. That's CCP Dr.EyjoG. He is the official economist for CCP Games, studying the dynamics of the economy within EVE Online. EVE Online is rather unique in that it does have someone who studies the very vibrant economy and dynamic economy and make sure that it is operating in a way that's going to be conducive to gameplay. So we're very, very pleased to have him with us. We have him for a limited amount of time here today. And I do want to say to everyone at CCP Games, including CCP Guard, to help put this session together, a very, very fond thank you. And to you, Doctor, for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you, and very happy to be with you. And always been interested in EVE University simply because my background is from, I have an academic career as my working for a university for joining CCP. So I was actually very pleased when I saw the players taking up the initiative of educating each other about the complex world that EVE University. So absolutely thrilled to be here.
Very good. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more on your background. First of all, what is your official title and function at CCP Games, and tell us a little bit more about your personal background and also how you came to know CCP and got involved with the game.
So from my current title here at CCP is Director of Analytics and Lead Economist for CCP. As such, I am responsible for analyzing in-game behavior, both regard to monitoring on how the customers are going through our funnels to become customers, looking at the onboarding, etc. So basically, we look at all aspects of the gameplay and how people become players, as well as deep diving into system. On a daily basis, our job is about creating reports, monitoring behavior, and assisting designers what is going on and what might be the potential impact of proposed game designs in various different areas of the game, but specifically the economy. That is kind of the high-level view of what we do today as a unit.
And what was your personal background and history before joining CCP Games?
So before joining CCP Games, I was a dean at a local university here in Iceland. Faculty of Business and Science was under my role, so to speak, where we had about 40 faculty members. It was a small faculty that focused on business, computer science, and science in general, but mostly focusing on biology, fisheries.
And how did how did you find out about this opportunity to become the economist at CCP Games, and what was it about that you found appealing enough to join the company?
It goes back to 2004, and remember that EVE was published in May 2003. Back in 2004, we had a small conference back at the university where I was working. That conference was experiments in natural resource economics. So we basically got people that were interested in experimental economics, Nobel laureate on that subject in economics, discuss how you can use experiments and economic theory, specifically with applying it to natural resource management. During that conference, we got a visit physicist, a guy with a doctoral degree in chaotic physics, and he wanted to discuss if games could be used as experimental platforms. So he did give a lecture on that, and that was basically Kjartan P. Emilsson, the lead, and he talked about how had created this universe that would follow the basic and their functioning markets. And during that lecture, I was basically sold on the idea that thousands and tens of thousands they were thinking. Did we know that a decade later we would be talking about 400,000 to 500,000 people coming together on the same platform, being able to monitor behavior happening under the basic rules of economics and being able to monitor and see what happens. This to me was a very interesting opportunity, and I started to about and study EVE Online as a game, even though I didn't really play it. And then a couple of years later, they actually advertised on Economist, and then I thought, well, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Why don't you at least try it? And 7 years later, I'm still trying.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you do in a typical day. What kind of aspects of the economy and the game do you track, and how do you track them?
A typical day doesn't really exist, but we can say that we are monitoring several different aspects of the universe. We monitor the inflows of ISK and outflows through certain faucets on a regular basis, not on a daily basis, but on a regular basis. Those reports, we are simply seeing if ISK coming into the game is in balance with ISK leaving the game, and the total ISK in the game is in balance. We use standard economic measures on that one, such as inflation, various different indexes about production and manufacturing, watching price changes on different levels. And you can actually see those in our monthly blogs on the indices that CCP recur usually. Then, as an example, on a daily basis, the Plex market, and we actually have automated systems that warn us if Plex trading activity seems to be going strange directions. And that basically requires us to keep live monitoring on that market, because that's one of the most important markets. That monitoring is done by our unit, and if we see something strange, we deep dive into it and then suggest actions or take direct actions on the market if we feel that is needed in order to keep a balance on that market. As I stated on a FanFest lecture a couple of years ago, we are very much hands-off unless something is broken. But luckily for us, that happens on very rare occasions that something breaks.
You mentioned monitoring the Plex price. The price of Plex has gone up bit by bit to a higher, the highest rates it's ever been at today. Why do you think why is that happening, and is that something that you're concerned about?
I am not concerned about the price level, but as I have stated before, my concerns are usually about the ease of the price level. And the pace has indeed been picking up since we had the battle earlier in February, which we internally just refer to as the bloodbath. And so we've been monitoring the market quite closely since then. But the underlying reasons are simple supply and demand that is matching. Basically, it's telling us that there is excessive demand for Plexes at the moment.
What kind of interventions do you do in the market? And what kind of things can you do if you see that something is going in a way that looks like it's going to be harmful to the economy?
Steps that we can and have actually taken in the past is simply to become part of the trading of the Plexes in order to stabilize something that is going in the wrong direction. I want to emphasize that we only do so when we see that there is something broken with systems of EVE, and that might not have anything to do with the Plexes. Broken somewhere else in the system that is creating ISK or concentrating too much ISK into the hands of, and they then using that to buy up Plexes, counteract that by direct trading, until we have figured out a fix for a particular expert. Now, to be absolutely clear, we have data very closely for the past 6 weeks, and all the market activity that we are seeing currently is all natural phenomena.
By the way, Dr. Eyjo, I think that you are on voice activation for your mumble, and we're getting a little dropping out, so I apologize for that. If you might want to check your settings and switch that to a push-to-talk key.
Yep.
But if that's feasible, we'll go on ahead and just try to muddle through here. Question. So if I understand what you're talking about here in terms of monitoring the Plex prices, et cetera, you're really just looking for very overt forms of market manipulation and then interceding only in those cases. Is that right?
That is correct. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, and you're a little clearer.
Okay, that is correct. Yes, that we are only interfering if something is broken.
Excellent. Yeah, we're getting a much better signal now, so thank you for that. How dynamic and expansive is the new Eden economy compared to, typical kinds of real-world economies? Give us an idea of the scope and how you evaluate its size and growth.
It's difficult to do a direct comparison to any real-life economies because we are really monitoring people's behavior on production, in the battles and so on. But in any real-life economy, you of course have additional functions which you cannot find within EVE Online. But simple examples as there are 15 trades per every second. There are tens of thousands of ships destroyed every day. All of that really tells us how kind of a big the entire economy is from a functional perspective. We have several hundred thousands and over 1 million trades per day on the biggest trade days. The economy as a dollar measurement would be equal to the economy of small nations, specifically in the third world. But I do feel that kind of comparison doesn't do justice neither to EVE Online nor the countries in the real life that are struggling to grow and to become something bigger than they are today. What I do feel that we should think about is how this adds to the overall economy of real life. You see, if a person sits down in front of a television and watches a TV show, what is the additional value that is being added to the real life? Not that much, is it? If you, however, participate in a game like EVE Online, then you're actually communicating with other people. You are building items that are scarce and other people are willing to pay for. And they are willing to earn money in-game in order to be able to acquire those goods. So all of a sudden, there is value being created within the game that you could add to the total value of stuff being created in real life. And all of a sudden, you start to have this very mixed boundary of where value is created and what is real and what is not real.
That is very interesting. I agree with you that, of course, when you're playing EVE Online, you are literally creating virtual goods. And because there's an equivalency between Plex prices and the currency ISK used in the game, people do equate a certain value, real-world value. For example, you often hear that the cost of a Titan can be as much as $3,000 US, converting it to Plex. Do you think that's an apt way of looking at the game, or is that not a very accurate way of looking at the value of virtual items in EVE Online?
No, I think it actually helps people to understand how valuable these items really are in EVE Online. And the Plex prices in-game are determined in direct trade between people that are willing to sell Plex and people that need to buy Plex in order to pay for the subscription. So the Plex price at any given time truly represents the value between Plexes as a dollar-valued item and ISK as a currency in EVE Online. So it's like any other foreign exchange market, so to speak. So I think it's a good way of evaluating or giving people a sense of the value that is going on in EVE Online. But people have to remember, though, that this is being that there are different economic forces in the two worlds. As an example, having two massive countries fight in real life, it's not really a truly economic boom if one country is really annihilated by another one. You're destroying infrastructure, you're destroying production facilities, etc. So war is not necessarily good for real life. However, in EVE Online, war is the underlying engine. We need consumption in all economies to be effective and efficient in distributing the resources. The consumption in EVE Online is the fighting, is the battles that are ongoing at any given time. So the more fighting that goes on, the healthier the economy becomes, because people need to produce more stuff and so on. So you cannot definitely say that a value of, like in the big bloodbath, that a value of $300,000 was lost. It is rather to say that the value of $300,000 was consumed to be able to have this type of a battle happening.
That is a very important distinction. One thing I wanted to always ask and understand was the degree to which you monitor and measure the creation and the destruction of items, the consumption of items, I guess is a better way of describing it in EVE Online. Do you measure those only on an aggregate basis, or do you look at individual markets? How granular do you get in your analysis of the economy?
We do go down to individual items and groups on a regular basis to see if there's any abnormal activities, any abnormal price changes that cannot be explained by in-game changes, design changes, or economic factors or economic forces in the game overall. So we do look at them to the level of the individual items. However, there are more than 7,000 items traded on the market in EVE Online, so we do not look at them on an everyday basis, but we have methods and systems in place to check for anomalies and abnormal behavior.
I had a request to ask you this question. Speaking of the number of items in EVE Online, do you feel that there are, from an economic standpoint, is there enough diversity in the number of items in the game, or should there be less? Should there be more? What do you think?
Definitely not less. Is it the perfect number? Probably not. So in saying we should not have fewer and it's not perfect, I can state that there is definitely room for more items, for more variety. And this is being added every year. We add new ships, we add new systems, we add new ways of acquiring things. Recently, we added ship skins, which adds to the diversity of ships available of the same type. So we will definitely make sure that this item base is increasing over time.
The player base of EVE Online has steadily increased over the years. As more players are joining EVE Online, what kind of impact does that have on the economy?
The more the merrier. And from a very technical standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a game design standpoint, EVE is always better with more people. The very reason is that the more people that you have, the bigger chances you have of being able to sell your product. The more diverse community you have, you are more likely to have interesting events happening. And when there are more people in the system, it gets crowded and there's more bigger likelihood of fighting, and more fights drive the economic engine. So it all comes together in saying, yes, the more people that we have in the game, the better. Of course, there can be technical limitations, as we sometimes feel when we are gathering in places, too many of us at the same time. But that's just a technical challenge that will always be there as long as EVE is growing, and I welcome that technical challenge.
To what degree do you get involved in game development discussions? Are you involved in all the discussions about the potential impact of changes to the game design to the economy, or is that something that you only do sporadically as an advisor?
I first and foremost do it as an advisor, where the teams call me for advice when they are thinking about changes that have an impact on the market, on usage of particular features, types, and as we have worked out in the past, changes to industry and manufacturing. Anything that is likely to have an overall impact on the balance of the economy, I get involved in that. My function in that is very much like a central bank manager in real life, that is advising and talking to the government at any given time about things being good or not for the economy. And as happens in real life, the government don't always agree with the central bank manager and vice versa, which I think is a healthy relationship.
You mentioned earlier the need to intervene occasionally for Plex prices. What other kinds of economic manipulation have you seen by players, and how significant is that really? What kind of effect does that have on the overall economy?
Well, we of course have all seen attempts by a certain alliance to corner a certain big market called JITA. And it is true that if you have a lot of cash on hand, then you can even have an impact on a market like JITA, but usually for a very short period of time. EVE has become so big that trying to have any long-lasting impact on prices is an experiment that is likely to go in a different direction than you think yourself. However, there are many regional markets, and there is no doubt that individual industrialist traders, they can corner a specific market somewhere out there in the universe and try to impact local prices. But in the four major trades, we have seen a very high degree of efficiency, and actually has surprised me how quickly prices in Amar or Rens or to Dixie change when prices in JITA change. So there is a constant feedback of price information traveling between these trade hubs. And then, of course, we have monitored a lot of fun and interesting we should say attempts to try to monitor the market. I remember one specifically where we were monitoring the Plex market. We felt that there was something strange going on, so we started monitoring who was waiting and what was going on in the forums. And we noticed this individual who was saying one thing on the forums and doing another thing when he was trading, trying to talk the market in the other direction than he was taking it. And then he was obviously going to try to dump a lot of plexes to cash in a quick profit. He was not very successful at that, but he tried.
What you're saying is that the market is so large now that it tends to correct itself. So even it's much more difficult now than it used to be to manipulate the markets in EVE.
Absolutely, it's getting more difficult with bigger markets, or with bigger population, I should say.
What effect, if any, do market information sharing tools like EVE Central have on trading and price fluctuations?
It should. It should definitely increase the efficiency, which would minimize the difference between a sell and a buy price, minimizing the margin, minimizing the spread, which is an indicator of a very efficient market. And with the latest release of all of the market data through the API in the client, I am expecting that to become even more efficient, and the traders to be able to focus on buy and sell orders and trying to make the profits by looking at up-to-the-minute data, which would be provided by websites like EVE Central. With the historical data being available consistently, people should be able to build their own trade models that become fairly effective, and then it becomes a game to have the best trade model.
I have a number of questions from the audience here about Plex pricing and the trends in Plex pricing. You mentioned earlier that you weren't concerned about the inflation of Plex prices. Is that totally a function of the increased demand from a higher player base, or is it more of a market trading, market manipulation that's affecting those prices?
From the data for the past few weeks, I would say the former, in the sense that it is simply a very popular item. There's a constant use base that uses Plex as a way to pay for the subscription, so there's constant demand every single month for Plexes, and supply can fluctuate depending on how interested people are in playing the game at any given time. So we can say that over time, demand has been increasing faster than supply has been able to keep up with.
Another question related to that, and I think you answered this partially, but are Plexes used mostly by established players or by newer players just joining the game?
Not by newer players joining the game. It is more of people that have been able to establish themselves in the game, but that does not necessarily mean that they are old players. It's simply as soon as people realize that this is a possibility, then people start engaging more with the game, and then they use this as one of their payment methods. Not an uncommon thing to see people using it as a payment for their alt accounts.
That's right. CCP Games has announced in the past that they'd like to see more integration between Dust 5.14 and EVE Online in the economies, but right now it's very limited. How do you envision the economies in Dust and EVE interacting in the future?
I can only speak to that on a very high level, and I will use the analogy of nation states. My personal vision is that within the EVE universe, there are different games which we can look at as different nations that are exchanging items and services on an open market where we can say an international market will form. And our vision is that we open little by little for this type of trading between the two universes. Today you can have EVE Online assist in factional warfare in Dust, and you can actually make a payment for that one way or the other. So people can then exchange services. Next step would be able to exchange goods and raw materials, etc. We're not there yet, but that's definitely the vision.
I've had another question from the audience here about Plex pricing, which is a good one, I think. Recently, CCP introduced multi-character training in exchange for Plexes. Has that had any effect on the price of Plex and the number that have been bought and sold?
Overall, we can state that the more options there is to use Plexes as a payment method, the demand for it should increase. And we can say that multiple card training started last year, and we've seen it become quite popular. But it has not been in the way of increasing large spikes. So it's not the underlying factor for any spike that we see, but it can definitely be one of the factors that is adding to this constant demand for Plexes. But currently, in terms of the total usage of Plexes, it is a factor, but not a significant factor.
I saw you present at FanFest last year, and you talked about the relationship of ISK syncs and ISK creation in the game. Do you think there are enough ISK syncs in EVE Online? And how would you change that if you thought that it would be useful?
It's been one of my recommendations, hunting recommendation for game design for several years now, that they take truly into account when they create new faucets to create new sinks at the same time and to balance the faucets that were giving considerable amounts of ISK into the game. For the past 15 months now, we can say that we are seeing a much better balance in the sinks and faucets than we had in the past, and the average amount of ISK per person being fairly stable. So I'm very pleased with the balance as it is in the economy right now. It doesn't change the fact that the second half of the question about how I would want to change it, how that and if I would want to see more sinks, which I would definitely answer yes, that's always good to have more sinks. But I would also love to have different kinds of sinks that relate more to consumption. And as a personal favorite, being able to adjust taxes in different trade hubs to make them less efficient, trying to distribute the trade over bigger hubs, because we know JITA is crowded like any other trade hubs in real life. So I would love to be able to use incentives like those, because they would both help the system, help the players, and add additional sinks to the game.
You mentioned earlier that war is the primary consumer of ISK in the game, or the primary consumer of goods that are created in the game.
Correct, goods.
After the recent big Titan battles that we've seen with a lot of expensive ships, have you had to intervene when people are buying up materials and trying to rebuild, or are you letting that operate as a free market?
Not at all. We will absolutely let that operate as a free market. And in the latest blog from CCP Recurve, you can see how the impact of the blood bowl was definitely there. It definitely impacted the titanium market when the bloodbath started, but the market was able to absorb that fairly quickly. But again, it was a big sink of economics in the game, so it is just normal and natural that you feel the effect of that for some time afterwards.
We have a lot of interest in plexes from our audience here today, so I apologize for that.
That's not the problem. I was expecting it because, as I said myself, we have been monitoring this 700 million mark quite closely in the past few days.
In fact, my question here relates to that, and that is, it seems that the higher prices for Plex is becoming prohibitive for newer players. Is there a upper limit that you would want Plexes to get to, or is it something that you think that needs to be continued to? I mean, if Plexes got to 1 billion or more, would that be a problem, do you think?
As a principal and as an economist, I cannot really say that I favor one price over another. Price is something that is formed in free trade between between consumers and producers, or those that supply Plex and those that consume Plex. So as such, the price is what it is. My only concern is when it happens quickly, because people have their production plans, people have their business plans, and they have a plan about how they're going to fund the next Plex. So if there is a large and quick increase in the Plex price, that would be a concern to me, as it is right now. But if that is happening due to basic economics forces, such as not enough supply to meet the demand that's in the system, then there's really nothing that we can do about it, and we will just have to allow the system to adjust to a new price. It's an interesting phenomenon to have to think about that as a company, thinking about our customers, wanting to help them, and at the same time not wanting to interfere with the market when it's actually functioning. So we truly only intervene if the market is not functioning, and as we are seeing it right now, the market is functioning just fine without any major players cornering and manipulating or trying to make a quick profit on the current situation.
Very good. So it's more about the degree or the rate of market fluctuation rather than the actual price that is something you need to be concerned about. Is that right?
Correct.
Over the years that you've monitored the game's economy, have you seen anything that surprised you? What surprised you the most? What was something you didn't expect that you saw occurring in the marketplace?
Well, what really surprised me initially was how truly effective it was. I was looking at a market that was functioning better than markets do in real life. They react to information almost instantaneously. If people have information from their test servers, that leaks into the prices almost instantaneously. The spread between buy and sell of any basic materials, of any basic ships, Tech 1 ships, etc., are fairly constant over time, which means that the markets are very efficient. So the overall efficiency of the system was surprising, or it was surprisingly pleasing, I should say. It wasn't surprising from a theoretical perspective, but being able to see it in practice functioning this well was truly surprising, and of course reinforced my own belief in economic theories as a basis of describing trade between individuals and the effectiveness of that system to distribute scarce resources. Then other surprises have been really about the players themselves, not necessarily about EVE Online systems or what's happening there, but rather the degree that the players are willing to go to plan and execute on market-related activities, both from production standpoint and from just a pure trading standpoint, and the sophistication that they use to gain advantage on that is quite pleasing and surprising, that how far people were willing to go to gain an advantage there.
Doctor, what do you think real-world economists can learn from the laboratory that is the EVE Online economy? What lessons do you think they can learn from that this artificial economy that you monitor?
Number one, the EVE economy is not artificial. It is actually real, because you have agents, producers and consumers, that are making decisions about what to produce, how to produce it, where to sell it, and at what price in the interaction between two human beings trying to come up with a best solution of a scarce resource problem. This is the same description as of any real-life economy. So it is not artificial, it is real. Now, what can a meat world learn from a free market trading economy like EVE Online? I would say we can sum it down to one sentence: don't mess with the system. Allow the systems to adjust themselves. This can be really difficult politically in real life, but in EVE Online you can see that the market systems, they are ruthlessly efficient at reacting to changes, external changes, internal changes in the economy. And I think in particular, people can monitor and try to understand the ISK of EVE Online, the monetary system of EVE Online. We do not have fiat in EVE Online. We have a currency that is used first and foremost as a way to make payments. The money comes in through a known pattern and leaves through a known pattern, and our goal is to keep a balance between volume of economic goods and the volume of ISK in EVE Online. Not being or actually I should rather say not having fiat money creates challenges for consumers. It's difficult to get loans. It's difficult to be a lender. And that puts a really high price on lending, unless you are a part of some alliance or corporation that's willing to lend you, and everything is based on trust. So I think there's a lot there that people can learn from EVE Online, both in the sense of saying, well, fiat money might not be that bad after all, but you need much better control. And you might even start to ask the questions, well, in EVE Online, if a bank fails, then a bank fails. Why don't we just allow that to happen in real life as well? So that would be kind of my two basic premises for learnings.
That's good. And I think that is interesting from the standpoint that EVE Online's economy is a little more, shall we say, more pure than, more laissez-faire than, say, other kinds of economies with all kinds of government intervention. Would you say that's the case?
That's definitely the case.
I've had a couple questions here about the Chinese server of EVE Online. Do you monitor that economy? Because I know that it is separate than the main server that the rest of us play on.
We do assist with monitoring of that economy as well, yes, with the regular reports as requested by those that operate that in the Shanghai office.
And are there any significant differences in how that economy has evolved versus the economy that we're used to on the main server?
Not not in terms of basic principles, but there are definitely some kind of just practical differences that seem to have happened over time, and it is a really fascinating. It's really fascinating study to able to compare these two systems with exactly the same items, with two different cultural worlds using those systems, and seeing how you do not end up with exactly the same prices, not exactly the same balance on everything, and yet it behaves in a very similar manner.
Also have some questions here about insurance. The insurance prices for ships seems to be, according to some players, less than it should be. Is there any, what effect, first of all, does insurance have in the economy? And secondly, do you know if there's any intention to try to balance the cost of insurance payouts relative to current prices?
Don't mention insurance to me. This is the worst run insurance company in the world. And asking to increase the payout is just a big no-no. That will increase the faucets into the game. The trick here is that people pay less for the insurance than they would need to in a real life, because we are subsidizing the insurance payout. We do adjust it to market prices on a regular basis, not every day, but on a kind of a quarterly basis, sometimes more often and sometimes less often. And we just make sure that there is somewhat of a balance between the market price and the payout. But if people feel that they're not getting enough payout from the insurance, as a central bank manager, I just have to say, sorry, they're bleeding too much out of this insurance company.
Yeah, we had some comments that it was the worst run insurance company as well. Would you, if you could change the insurance system in some way, or maybe even do away with it altogether, would that be a better option in your view?
No, I think we have found a solution that helps people, specifically early on in their career, to be able to have a little bit less an impact of losing a valuable ship that they've been working for, at the same time as it's not a big faucet of the total system. So I think it is in a fairly good balance at this point in time. And I do believe that we need to help people to kind of rebuild their status, their ship once they've lost one. And remember, you don't get any payouts for the items that you lose and so on. So it's all just about the hull, which keeps the loss definitely meaningful.
You mentioned loans earlier on. I know there have been calls in the past for some kind of formal in-game mechanism for possibly getting loans. Do you think that would be something that should be added to the EVE Online economy, or is that something that you think is best left up to interplayer interactions?
We have discussed in general this notion of institutionalizing trust, which is one of the basic foundations that you need in order to have loans. As soon as we start to institutionalize trust, CCP has become a player within the institution, because we would be verifying or creating a system that somehow verifies people's standing, people's wealth, people's collaterals, etc. And as soon as that systems break, we as operator of the system become responsible, and hence become the bank in EVE Online, so to speak, that cannot fail, like we have in real life. And we have always said that the EVE Online is a true sandbox where we are only the janitors. So we have always concluded that us being the institution for trust, us putting in a system, is not a good solution to EVE Online as a sandbox. It doesn't change the fact that in order to have advanced financial markets evolve, you do need to institutionalize that trust somehow. So if we would want to take banking, futures trading, derivatives trading, if we would want to take that and let that become part of EVE Online, then yes, we would have to go to this full length or come up with a system where the players themselves can truly be that institution of trust. We still haven't solved that problem, but if there are any ideas, I'm more than willing to listen to that.
Very good. I'm sure that you'll get some feedback from players on that. I have another question here from that was passed to me earlier, and that is, you used to offer a quarterly economic report on the new Eden economy, and that seems to have fallen off. What are your plans for future reporting to the player base on the economy?
Yes, we stopped publishing the quarterly economic report simply because it was too much of a work for us and there was too many things to do to assist with operating and running the EVE economy and the reporting for the company so that we can service our customers. So unfortunately, the work that went into it was just too much for us. We have been publishing blogs on the price indices, and we want to try to keep them on a frequent basis, and hopefully be able to add to that in the near future, and supplement it with interesting blogs like the latest one on the impact of the bloodbath on the titanium and mineral market in general. Then it was realized the market data became available through the API, that the players themselves, if they on as much data as possible, they can start writing what's going on and have an opinion on what's going on. And I'm really looking forward to that as being the future vision, that we really allow the players to be the ones who are the true experts about what's going on in the economy at any given time.
Yeah, and with the introduction of more and more CREST kinds of capabilities, that certainly becomes more feasible. And is that the more desired direction then, is to allow the players to assume that role of economic analysts and reporters?
Yeah, I mean, just like in real life, you have central banks that have the reports, but then there are thousands and tens of thousands of people that are reading into that data and coming up with different interpretations, and more often than not being able to gather maybe additional data and augment the official data with that additional data and coming up with interesting analysis. So with the hundreds of thousands of brains that are out there studying EVE Online, we should definitely tap into that brain power and just get them going on this. And now we have the market data. My personal vision and my personal desire is that we're able to get more and more data out there without, of course, threatening any type of character level data or any type of information going out there that should not be. So therefore, there will always be a role for a central bank that can go deeply and look at data at character level and report on that. So I see these two functions really support each other. And I want to ask EVE University, why don't you guys have a journal where people can publish articles on EVE Online, even focusing on economy and etc. A peer-reviewed one. So we could have a peer-reviewed journal.
Well, we've certainly considered that idea, and we've had some calls for that, of course. So it's something we'll take under consideration. It's a good idea. I have another question. Now, you mentioned reporting. I've seen you present for a couple years now at EVE, at the EVE Online Player Gathering FanFest, and I'll be attending that soon, the next one as well. I assume that you'll be presenting again on the state of the EVE economy. It seems to be an annual event every year.
It is indeed, and yes, we have committed to being on stage. I'm looking at my team members sitting here with them right now, and they sink in the chair because they know they're going to have to do some additional hours in order to get it done, but we will get it done.
And for those who haven't ever seen that, I know that those are available on YouTube, and they can watch those. Those are often the best standard reports, most comprehensive reports on the state of the EVE economy.
Thank you, but we really do like them, and yes, you're absolutely right. You can see all of them, I think, on our CCP YouTube channel.
One final question for you, and I want to thank you again for the time that you spent with us today, and also thanks for wading through some of the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. It's been a fascinating discussion. We have many new players who are in EVE University, and of course we've seen a surge of new players as a result of some of the big battles recently. For new players joining EVE Online, what advice would you give them about understanding the game's economy?
I'll split it on three bullet points. Number one, try to think that you need to understand it differently than any other economy. It's just as real as whatever economy that you're participating in, and it's definitely more real than the Icelandic economy, but let's not go into that discussion. So don't think that you need to be an expert to participate. It is a functioning economy and you are a part of it. Please participate. That's number one. Number two, don't be afraid of the market. I was actually surprised when I found out a couple of years ago that we actually had new players coming in that weren't quite sure if they should be using the market or not, because they felt, is it the right price or not? Why should I be using this market and not selling it directly to a person that I trust, etc. And I would kind of want to go tell new players, figure out the main trading stations, Rens, Amar, Dodixi, Cheetah, and just go there and participate in the market. Sell your stuff. The markets have proven to be very efficient for in all of the major items that a new player is acquiring, and that is one of the best way for you to get to know the EVE Online, get to know the game, and to be able to acquire. Don't be afraid of the market. And number three, I would say, if you've ever been interested, even just a tad slightly interested in economics, this is the right world to start really deep diving into it, because there's a lot of data available, there's a lot of discussion available, and you can actually participate, test, and try, and learn. And that knowledge, because EVE Online is real, because the economy of EVE Online is real, that knowledge you can utilize in the real world as well. So when you're trading on the in-game market, when you are seeing the markets and the impact that things might be having on particular items, you are doing exactly the same as you would do in real life. So the knowledge acquired in EVE will help you in real life.
Excellent advice. One final question I had from the audience. Do you ever have a chance to play EVE Online for fun yourself?
I do indeed, and my colleagues here often make fun of me when I'm losing ships in circumstances that I would be too embarrassing to talk about.
So you actually are familiar with the pilot mechanics and what it's like to lose a ship?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And just an advice from me to the new players, don't go AFK.
Never go AFK. In fact, I've had one last question here. Hey, since you can do it, do you ever give yourself unlimited money?
No, and I cannot really do it because we have our systems in such a way that no single person will be able to do that for their own account. In addition, we have an internal affairs unit that monitors activity on all CCP employees' player accounts. And believe me, if anything would be found out, I would not be an employee of this company for another minute. People are very strict, and the CCP Bible that tells how we as employees can play the game is very strict, and we must follow that to the letter in order to allow us to play.
A serious question or a serious answer to a frivolous question, so thank you for that. Doctor, I want to say once again, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for your good work. I look forward to seeing you at the FanFest presentation. And for those of you who are listening to this particular Q&A session, we are going to post the recording to the EVE University recorded class library, where you can review it and share it with your friends. So thanks for participating today. Doctor, thank you for being our guest today. We very much appreciate it.
And thank you for allowing me to join you. As I said earlier, as an academic, I was always really impressed that the player base had established its own university, and you guys have definitely proven that education does work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Doctor. Everyone, have a good day and fly safe.
Thank you.